Yay! Welcome to my 5-part series about the transformational power of journaling. I'm a huge journal fan. I love journaling, and so I want to bring it to you. I want to talk to you all about it. And today in particular, we're going to talk about something really dear to my heart, which is journaling through depression and anxiety. And I'm also going to add like grief and heartbreak and just overall BS that comes into your life today. I don't know if you can cuss on Facebook Live, so I'm going to try to call it BS, not what I really want to say. Those of you who follow me elsewhere know that I have a potty mouth. I'm a sailor. But today we're going to talk about journaling through depression and anxiety. And it's going to be deep and it's going to be hard, but we're going to work through it and it's going to be awesome. I love this. And I want to start with saying I'm not a therapist. I'm just sharing what has worked for me. And that journaling is not a replacement for therapy, especially if you have a severe issue going on. You want to use it to supplement your therapy and working with a professional, not actually using it as your therapy. Although I've gotten to the point where I do use it as therapy and I'm able to talk to my therapist a lot less and save myself some money by using my journal in between. And those sessions that I do have with her are a lot more in-depth and intense because of my journaling. So that's what we're going to talk about today. This is all part of leading up to my giant giveaway that I'm having over $700, which includes a spot in my Journal Through It course. And it's Journal Through It from oh shit to I've got this in 30 days. So this is all part of the giveaway, all part of leading up to that. So you can win over $700 in goodies, and I'll tell you more about that at the end. But if you want to find out about it, you can go to laurenmariefleming.com/journaling, and there you can also find all of the replays of these workshops. I'm doing 5 of them. So if you missed them live, you can find all the replays there or in my Facebook feed. That's facebook.com/laurenmarieflemingwriter. So now let's get to the mini workshop. So journaling. My personal experience with depression and anxiety, I probably had depression younger than this, but I remember hitting puberty and this kind of weight just sitting on my shoulders and becoming overpowering. I didn't want to get out of bed. I didn't have all the energy I used to have. I didn't have just a desire to do things. I didn't want to be around people like I used to. And it was really hard. It came at the same time for me as my dad had cancer. So it was difficult to understand how much of it was sad about my dad's cancer and how much of it was actual clinical depression. But it became apparent that it was clinical depression as I got older and older, and it just kept coming and it kept getting worse. I struggled for a really long time with self-harm. I have had periods of time where I was on suicide watch, and one time where I actually seriously tried to not be here anymore. And it was after that time that I realized I needed to find something that could be portable and accessible, something that I could bring with me wherever I was, have with me wherever I was, some kind of something that I could use instead of self-harm, instead of these really self-deprecating behaviors that I had, these things that were not helping me, were not moving me forward in my life where I wanted to go, cutting myself, drinking, random sex with strangers. The things that I was doing weren't working. And so I was looking for something that could bring me more satisfaction and joy and be portable and give me a space to work through my problems. And that's when my therapist and I at the time found journaling. And I'd kind of journaled before then. My very first therapist, when school counselor in 8th grade, gave me a notebook and told me just to write down everything I was feeling. And she had me draw a picture of my body, and instead of cutting myself, she had me draw on that. And that was my first version of journaling. And I bring that up to share my story, but also to say that when we think about journaling, we think of it as this thing that we have to write and do, long pages of profound Virginia Woolf style diaries. And that does not have to be journaling. It can be simply writing. It can be scratching. It can be drawing horrible stick figures like I do. I'm not a good drawer. I can paint, but I'm not a good drawer. And so sometimes my stick figures are horrible, but I get the idea. I get it out. So journaling is anything that you do to get this kind of thing out of your head onto paper and into this more productive zone of actually being able to work with those emotions, those feelings, and those thoughts. So my personal experience was with that. And then when my brother died, journaling was kind of, for a long time, felt like one of the only things that I had. It was one of the only tools I really still had. I kind of, everything fell apart, but I could still write, I could still journal. It was still a way that I had a tool in my tool set that I still felt like. And that was because I took the pressure off myself, like I was just saying, of it to be anything but just a way to get an outlet. So I think that the first journal entry I ever wrote, right after he died, my sister's girlfriend gave me a journal. And I remember there was a lot of pressure for it to be profound and to be something that I wrote in every day, and something that made me feel like I was gonna write the next great book on grief. I was gonna be like C.S. Lewis, and people were gonna be reading this for years and years. I sat down to write, and I couldn't write anything at all. I could not write anything at all. And so what I wrote was FFFFUUUUCCCCCKKKKK. And that profanity was the word that I wrote over and over and over again for probably the first 3 months. What the hell? Oh my God. FUCK, everything. Over and over again. It was just that. And it was my way of getting it out. It was my way of making it come out and out of my head and into this sphere that exists outside of myself. So it becomes less about me and becomes more about the thing that I'm trying to process. So that is how journaling has affected my life, how it's helped my life. It has given me a space to take it out of my head, out of me, and make it something like so I can subjectively look at and objectively move through. So it's still part of me, but I can look at it with a little bit of distance when it's in my journal, especially if I write it down and go back and look at it later. So that's how journaling's helped me. Now I want to talk about some of the ways that journaling can help you. Again, I want to say that it's not a substitute for therapy. I think that professional help, people who are trained in it, who can help you find the right diagnosis if you're going through something, give you some of those tools, that's really important. But how journaling works really well is kind of the supplement to therapy. So if you've seen a professional, or if you're currently, like if you're traveling, you can't always have your therapist with you. Also, I can't afford to go to a therapist twice a day, but I can journal twice a day. And your journal can be a way for you to supplement therapy, but I don't want you to think that it's a way to get completely out of it, because I'm not a therapist and your journal isn't either, and sometimes you need professional help. So I just want to say that again. But two of the biggest ways to use journaling is, I call it triaging a trigger, and the other one is reflecting. So we're going to talk about triaging a trigger first. The first way that I started using journaling, and one of the ways that I see people start using journaling, is what I call triage. And triage is like just dealing with the most important issue first as it's happening. So your journal is a way for you to triage a situation. Your journal is a way for you to get help in the moment. So if you're having horrible depressive thoughts, if you want to self-harm, if you're anxious, if you have to go to an event and you don't want to go, if you have to even just like exist in the world these days, there's going to be triggers that happen in your life. There's going to be things that make you feel horrible and hard and deep, and that bring up everything you've ever felt. And then if you have depression, that could be a daily occurrence. That could be a difficult thing to deal with on a regular basis. So journals are a great way. Sorry, I'm switching it up. Journals are a great way to triage a situation and get help in that moment. And it is really simple to do. You just take a piece of paper, anything near you. You don't even have to have an actual journal or notebook with you. And you just write down everything you're feeling. Free flow, free flow, free flow, everything you're feeling. And if you can't write down everything you're feeling, try scratching, drawing, scribbling, something to get physical, because I feel like so much anxiety and depression exists within our physical body, and it exists on this like visceral level that feels really kind of part of our fight, flight, or freeze mechanism. It feels like our cells are kind of like reacting. And so what I like about the triage idea of journaling is it gives me a place to kind of get that physicality out. So I'll just like scribble or write or just get it out, or scratch, or I'll draw, or I'll tear up the piece of paper, or I'll do something physical with the pen and the paper, and that helps me kind of bring this tension, this anxiety, this like shaking that I get personally when I'm feeling anxious, when my depression and anxiety is up, or my grief, or I'm triggered or something, I start shaking, and that gives me a place to kind of put that kinetic energy. So I try to find some way to like physically do it, but I also use it in the moment if I have borderline personality disorder. And one of the ways in which that affects me is that there are little voices in my head that are not mine. They're somebody else's, but they're voices in my head that tell me like, you're horrible. You're bad. No one's ever gonna love you. You're ugly. You're unlovable. You're stupid. You're never gonna be a success. You're always gonna be a piece of shit. You're a bad person. You have to make up for the fact that you're this bad person, that you're this horrible person. So that voice in your head that's constantly telling you these things, you can give it a space to go. And one of the things with my personal type of depression is that that voice in my head often is my inner child. It's not even my inner child. It's the things that people told my inner child. It's the parts of me that were made fun of as a kid. It's the parts of me that were berated as a kid. Sit down, shut up, you're too loud, you're too big. The things kids made fun of me for at school: you're too fat, you're ugly, you're stupid, you're a know-it-all, you're a show-off. So these things, they're those voices that my inner child absorbed, and it's screaming them back at me. And if I tell it to shut up, that doesn't work. It just screams louder, and it's just like, who are you to tell me to shut up? I'm not sitting down. I'm not shutting up. I'm going to be louder. It's quite a rebellious little inner child. So if you give that inner child of yours a place to get all those fears that it has out, we all are just like broken little children. And some of us are happy, wonderful little children too. But children are broken purposely in our systems. They're told to like be quiet. They're told how to behave. They're potty trained. I mean, all these things are wild, natural instincts are kind of broken out of us to become part of society. And the way in which those are broken are often really cruel and almost inhumane. And so if you think about that, there's no wonder that your voice inside your head is trying to break you too, because it has been broken. So if you give it a place to talk in the moment, a place to get all that fear out, a place to like say what it needs to say, let it write it all out. Sometimes I write thank you, but I'm good over it. Sometimes I tear it up. Sometimes I just put it away and let it be. Sometimes I throw it away. I give it a space. I say thank you for telling me your fears, but your fears don't get to like take control right now. And my fears don't get to take control. So if you give it a space to get out of your head, it won't stay in there. It won't continue to have that dialogue. Write it all out, tell it all out. And I see, like, if I write these things down, they seem a lot more ridiculous than when they're in my head. If they're in my head and I think, oh, I'm stupid, I'm ugly, I'm worthless, I really should die. I mean, these are thoughts that I've had many times in my life. And in my head, they seem real. They seem valid. They seem like, oh, yeah, that's probably something I should do. But when I write it out and I look, I'm stupid, I'm ugly, I'm invalid, I have no value, I should die. I'm like, no! These are all not things that I believe in. These are not things that I would say to a best friend. These are not things I want to say to myself. So when you write them out, you can kind of have some distance, again, that distance that I keep talking about that's good in journaling, and you can really work through what that feeling is and where it comes from. And so it helps you through that actual moment. It helps you to triage your triggers. The second way that I love to do it is reflection. So you can write in the moment and reflect on it later. That's definitely something that you can do. Although a lot of times going back and looking at it doesn't actually help you. So what I do is instead of reading through the whole thing, I write on the side kind of some of the bigger points. Like, I'm having a rough day, or this is about X, or the overarching idea of this journal entry is Y. And so I write that in the margins, and I tend to go back and look at the margins instead of reading through all of that diatribe that my inner voice did. Just like get it out and don't read through it again, but put like an overall idea. So when I'm in therapy, I can bring my journal to therapy and say, hey, on this day I was feeling this, on this day I was feeling this, and I can see any patterns. So I want to kind of take you through something right now that's kind of visualization. So if you can close your eyes if you want, or you can just keep listening. But I want you to take a moment to think about a time when you were anxious. So everyone's been anxious at some point, whether you have anxiety, clinical anxiety or not, whether you have depression or not. Somebody's had some point where they were like anxious and they were nervous and they kind of physically reacted to a situation and the anxiety of it. So I want you to close your eyes if you can. If you're driving, please don't close your eyes. And ask yourself these questions. So what triggered that experience? What happened to make that experience happen? How did you react outwardly? Like, what did people around you notice? What would have the people around you noticed? How did you feel physically? So, is your body shaking? Are you sweating? Are you standing still? Are you holding your breath? What was happening in your head? What were you thinking? What were the things that you were telling yourself? Was it reeling? Was it blank? Did you shut off? Or did you spiral? So going through that little bit of those questions, whenever I think about an incident where I was having anxiety or an incident where my depression was acting up, or part of my mental illness is that I lash out at people, and I had to learn to not do that. I did that through journaling, like through the triage, but I also wanted to go back and look at the trigger points and really understand my triggers and understand why I act in certain ways. And so I used this, okay, what happened that triggered it? Write that down. What was the reaction that people around me saw? So sometimes people have no clue. I don't show it at all. And sometimes they can notice because I shut off, and sometimes they can notice because I'm an asshole. And so it just depends on each situation. How did I react to those around me? What was my outwardly appearance? Then what was happening to me physically? Was I shaking? What were my body triggers? It's so important to learn those, learn your body and learn how your body handles triggers. And then what was happening in my head? What was I saying? What was I doing? What was going on? And if you take those and you answer all of them, you can go back and try to kind of reflect on a pattern. And by answering those questions, by taking each situation, I take situations all the way back to 8th grade. But I particularly did this after a breakup of mine because I was in a really bad place. And at the end of it, I was really angry a lot and I was yelling a lot and I was really angry. And so I took each situation at which I lashed out, and I asked myself, what triggered it? What happened before it? How did I react outwardly to the people around me? What was my physical triggers? What was going on in my body? And that helps me understand, when it's coming up, I can start feeling it in my body before I recognize it in my head. And then what was happening in my head? Where was I spiraling? Did I shut off? Did I spiral? What was I saying to myself? What was I doing? What was I afraid of? What was going on in there? And how this helps is it, one, again, gets it out of your head, and two, it kind of records the triggers so you can work through. So now I understand my triggers a lot better. I won't be that angry person in a relationship again. I'll know how my physical body reacts before my mental body goes on this downward spiral. I know how I treat those around me when I'm like this. I now know that coming over and helping me talk through it doesn't help. I need space. And through writing these down, going through each situation at which my depression acted up, which my anxiety acted up, I can then understand the ways in which I can care for myself in those hard moments. So this helped me figure out, in therapy, I put it when I'm really depressed, I need to just take a nap. I need to sleep. I need to allow myself to lay in the bed, because sometimes that's all I can do. And sometimes that's all that you're going to be able to do. And if you use a journal to figure out what works for you. Oh, the last thing I forgot to add is what would have helped in the situation, or what helped the situation? How did I finally de-escalate? How did I finally feel better? And for me, a lot of those is sleeping. Sleep is really important for me. Sometimes all I can do is nap. I remember one time when I was horribly, horribly depressed, I sat with a bottle of pills in my hands and I was trying to figure out what to do. I wanted to take the bottle, but I wanted to find some other option. And I wrote in my journal, what can I do besides take this bottle of pills? And the only thing I wrote back was nap. And so I went and took a nap, and that nap saved my life. And sometimes our journals can be this voice of reason. They can be your voice of your inner self. I know people who are religious that consider it their way to connect with the voice of God. I think that it can kind of connect you to something beyond yourself, beyond your brain in this current moment. And so you can ask it questions and you can get answers. And so that's where the asking questions is the triage and the getting answers is the reflection. So those are my two greatest ways of using journaling to help you to not... Sorry, my mind went blank because I got really excited about telling you this story. So one time I was on top of a mountain hiking, and I hated it. I was hating every minute of it. It was 1 whole mile uphill, which a mile is not that long. Like I can walk a flat mile in 15 minutes and I'm happy and I'm fine. And that's like a good walk, easy walk. I'll do that any day. A mile straight uphill, I'd rather poke myself in the eyes with scissors. And I was with my partner at the time, and I wrote about this in my book, Body Love, 10 Steps to Profoundly Loving Your Body. And I lashed out at her. I was thinking about how she was athletic and I wasn't. I was thinking about how she'd never understand what it was like to be a fat person. She'd never understand what it was like to have asthma. She'd never get it. She'd never get it. It's all her fault. It's all her. And what it became was all the things that I had been told were bad about myself. Being fat, having asthma, not being able to breathe, not being athletic. These things were about me, and I was lashing out about them at her because she was all the things that I wasn't, which is actually one of the things I loved about her. But in that moment, it's the things that I hated. And what I did was I lashed out at her. Instead of figuring out the help that I needed, I lashed out at her. And we got to the top of the mountain, and I pulled out my journal, and I wrote down why all that was happening. And it was a little too late for that day, but what it did is it allowed me to figure out how I could prevent that from happening again, how I could prevent my internal pain and anxiety and depression from becoming anger that ended up hurting her and giving her issues. And that's the cycle of abuse, right? That's especially with borderline kids usually come from borderline parents, and you don't deal with your emotions and you just lash out at each other. So if you can use your journal as a way to ask yourself questions in that moment. And so that's why I was distracted, because I was thinking about how much it has helped me in my life in these really difficult situations where everything's triggering me physically, mentally, everything. I can just pause, sit down with my journal, and write it out and ask myself, what's going on? Why are you doing this? What was triggering this? What's happening in your head? No, you're not worthless. This is a really friggin' hard mountain on shale and hard to climb, and everyone else is not breathing well around you. Everyone else is having to stop. It's not just you. You're not the bad guy. So I can write all this stuff down in the moment, and then I can work through it later in therapy and kind of stop myself before I head down that spiral of depression and anxiety. So that is the ways that I use journaling, and the ways that I would suggest you try to use journaling. 1, triaging in a situation, writing out everything you're thinking, scratching, drawing, getting that physicality out, getting it out of your head in the moment if you're depressed, if you're anxious. And the second way is using it as reflection, looking back at situations at which you had depression controlled you or anxiety overtook you, and really reflecting on it and using it, especially bringing it to therapy and looking at those and finding out how you can understand what alleviates your depression and your anxiety, what can release those triggers, and how you're triggered, and what you can do when you're triggered, and how you can take care of yourself best in those situations. So that's what works for me. That's what's worked for the people that I've shared this with before and taught this workshop in person with before. I would love to know what works for you if you want to let me know in the comments below. And I'm really excited about the opportunity to delve deeper into journaling through anxiety and depression with my course, Journal Through It from Oh Shit to I've Got This in 30 days. And it officially opens for enrollment June 14th, and class starts June 28th. But you can win a spot in my course, in my giveaway. I'm giving away over $700 in goodies, which includes a spot in my Journal Through It from Oh Shit to I've Got This in 30 days course, a one-on-one coaching session with me. I'm currently booked with clients, and this is one of the only ways that you can get in for a one-on-one coaching session with me. And you can get a journal like this, or I have a lot of other colorful options and wonderful sayings on them in my shop.laurenmariefleming.com, and you get a signed copy of my book, Body Love, 10 Steps to Becoming Loving Your Body, and you get a care package from me to you, which is my favorite part of the giveaway. That'll include a bigger box of some of my special blend Daily Decadence evening tea and body breakfast tea. So I'm really excited. It's over $700. It's a really exciting giveaway. I love giving away stuff. I love providing you all with services and help and everything and giving it away. And I just get really excited about giveaways. So if you want to enter, you can go to laurenmariefleming.com/journaling. And you could also find it, this is a 5-part series, so you can find the other 5 videos there once I do them. This is the second day. So tomorrow we'll have some myths about journaling debunked, and we'll talk about these ideas that people have around journaling that aren't true, and make it easier for you to actually find time and feel comfortable and confident journaling. And so that's tomorrow, but all of the series, if you missed them or you want to watch them again, can be found in my Lauren Marie Fleming writer Facebook feed or at laurenmariefleming.com/journaling. Thank you so much for joining. We had a bunch of people join live, so that's exciting. And it's been really great chatting with you all. You can always ask me questions during these Facebook Lives in the little box down there, but or maybe it's that way on your computer. I'm not really sure where it goes, but you can always ask me questions live, and I'm always available at info@laurenmariefleming.com. But make sure that you go enter the giveaway, get a spot in my Journal Through It course, and that's at laurenmariefleming.com/journaling, and I'll also put that link down in the comments. Thank you again for joining, and I'll talk with you later. Bye!